What? What is that?
What is what?
I was not ready for us to grow live and you to pull that out. What is that? For our audio listeners, please tell us what the heck that is.
Well, for our audio listeners, this is a World Aquanaut Security Patrol cap, officially licensed.
Officially, by, where?
The copyright holders. See, there's a wasp logo.
That is really nice. I haven't seen that up close before. What? That's from a costume of some kind?
It is. It's from a child's costume, which I very creepily keep in my spare room.
Excellent. We're not going to ask why that is, but I will ask you for a quick review of the quality of the material. How well finished is it? That logo, the wasp logo on it looks very nice.
The wasp logo looks great. The material itself is pretty thin. It's been left out in the sun. I bought it used, so it's not in great condition.
Used by a child at some point or another.
Overall, a 4 out of 10 for this.
4 out of 10.
Cap. Doesn't fit me, but
4 out of 10 was the age of the child you snatched it from.
Let's not get into that on the air, please.
All right, well, let's go to the intro instead. Welcome back to the Security Hazard Show, a show so treasured you have to go to Casablanca to buy a map so that you can find it. Yeah.
Nice.
Good intro.
I'm here. I'm here with a man who used Stingray episode titles as his chatting up lines back in his Stingray days, including Treasure Down Below. And his name is Jack Knoll.
Thank you so much. And well, what more can we say about this man who's joined me as my co-host? He snatched he snatched a wasp uniform off of a 4-year-old child. It's Ben Wolf-Page.
It could only be me. It could only be me.
Oh, boy.
For the record, for anybody who's seriously concerned, I actually did buy this in a shop.
Yeah. Did they have any other kind of good Stingray stuff, or is it just
no? That? Just this.
Yeah,
charity shop
like in a charity shop.
Yeah,
amazing.
It comes with the full suit, which I think has turned up in an episode of this show before, but if not, it will do again.
Oh, it will.
It's just such a lovely thing,
Yeah. It's very nice. It reminds me of. Sorry, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but it reminds me. Very first convention I ever went to, I did a cosplay as Parker using, at the time, a very, very cheaply made Parker costume that was commercially available. And I think a year later, I went to another event. I just had the hat. And David Graham was there. And for some reason, he ended up wearing the hat. Because it's Parker, he was wearing the hat. And Matt Zimmerman looked at him and thought, why are you wearing that hat? Sorry, that's my Matt Zimmerman impression. He said, why are you wearing that hat? And I was like, well, it's a Parker hat. He's wearing a Parker hat. And Matt just said, that's not a Parker hat. Got very, very indignant about it. Just
personally offended that you were calling it Parker's hat when it clearly wasn't.
Yeah, it was a cheap, nasty piece of polyester or something. I don't know. It wasn't very
tricky thing making a commercially available cosplay.
Absolutely, yeah. But hey, they try.
Anyway, what's
wasp, coming up? I will say one more time, that wasp one is very nice. So
thank you. Thanks very much. Other than that, that's our podcast for today. Thanks for listening. There's more. Jack, what's coming up on the show today besides tangents about hats?
Well, we got quite a lot coming up on today's show, and I actually don't know the full extent of all of it. We're going to start off with some sad news. We're going to be talking about the passing of Prentice Hancock, who famously played Paul Morrow in Space 1999. So we're going to have a quick chat about him. And then we're going to be jumping into a special assignment where we're going to be talking about the Stingray episode Treasure Down Below, which is a beloved episode by the two of us. I'm very excited to chat about that with you. And then, well, I don't know what's coming up at the end of the show, because we have kind of played the Joker in our pack. Ben and I have an arrangement where when we're planning out the episodes, we each have a Joker that we can play, which is like mystery segment arranged by one of us where the other person doesn't know what it's about. And on this occasion, Ben has played his Joker, which we lovingly refer to as Big Ben Strikes Again. I'm sure many of you will get that reference. He's going to play his Big Ben Strikes Again Joker card, and I just have to experience whatever it is he's got planned for the rest of the show. So I'm as much in the dark as everyone watching and listening about what's coming up later on. So I'm excited for that. Have you got
are you nervous?
Teasers, any clues? I'm nervous. I'm also I'm relieved to not have to think about what's coming up later. Yeah. I am comfortable. I trust you. I want to leave it in your hands.
That was your first mistake.
I want to watch you. I want to watch you either sink or swim. Basically,
brilliant.
I'm excited for that, and I'm sure you're going to do a fabulous job.
Oh, thanks. Thanks so much. Yeah. Well, I will say, as a bit of a tease, as a hint for you, Jack, the title of this episode that we've picked for our special assignment does have a bit of a connection with what I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
So I'll let you ponder that and interpret it however you choose. And then when we get down to the wire, all will be revealed.
Okay.
And then you can all go back to your homes in a state of total disappointment.
Well, all that to look forward to later on. But first, we're gonna start by paying tribute to Prentice Hancock. We had the news a few days ago that at the age of 95, I believe, he had passed away. And I mean, most of us will know him as Paul Morrow from the first season of Space 1999, as well as making several other Jerry Anderson appearances. Of course, he's very famous for his Doctor Who guest roles in Spearhead from Space, Planet of the Daleks, Planet of Evil, and the Reboss Operation. So a selection of classic Doctor Who stories in there. And basically, he had guest roles in every classic ITC live action adventure series across the the 70s and things like that. So just a very visible screen presence in all of our favorite TV shows. So I think it was right that we just have a quick chat about what we love about him as an actor and what he brought to things like, I mean, let's first of all start with Space 1999. Ben, what do you think about him as Paul Morrow?
Oh man, well, I'm a year one guy all the way, year one over year two every time, and that's mostly because of characters like Paul Morrow. I mean, he's just an absolute rock for that show in a way, because he's very much like the hub of Main Mission. He's sort of the heart of the show in a lot of ways. And he's got this he feels like kind of like a classical World War II type hero. Something about him. He's very like action man. He had that kind of like composure and stiff upper lip.
Literally. But there's also, what I like about that is he has that stiff upper lip, but there is also warmth. That, like, he is a likable character, and I don't know what it is, because he does a lot. Let's be honest, he does quite a lot with very little. Because Paul Morrow is not particularly a starring role, he doesn't get to do many kind of big action scenes. Most of the time he is in Main Mission telling people what to do, or saying yes commander to Commander Koenig's orders
on the monitor.
Exactly. But he does all of that as you say, that stiff upper lip kind of almost a nobility about him the whole way through. But there are little touches of warmth and just humanity about him. He brings humanity to that first season.
A little twinkle in his eye, I think, with how he approached that role too, which is just the right amount. If he had his tongue too much in cheek, it would have been hard to take it seriously as a piece of drama. But it's just the right amount that it's like, I can take this man seriously, even though he's wearing bell-bottom trousers. It's a lovely performance. It's one of my favorites. I love him in The Last Sunset, a classic Space 1999 episode where he has a bit of a romance with Sandra. I think for most fans, that's a top 10 moment from the show.
Yeah.
Just because it's such a sweet, honest scene. Played so well between two great actors, two underrated actors in Prentice Hancock and
I mean, that's what's lovely about that particular episode is it gives some of the sort of supporting cast a bit more to do, and Prentice Hancock definitely steps up in that moment and delivers, because he also has his fits of, if I'm remembering the episode correctly, I haven't seen it for a while, but his fits of rage that come on as he slowly descends into madness. That's really memorable as well. Anything where he's gets to do something outside of the character's normal remit is always memorable. I love as well, is it Black Sun where he's playing the guitar? That's really lovely. He has that really, I think is it also Black Sun? He does his little thumbs up thing. That's always very memorable as well. Just because it's just class, pure class.
So much to appreciate. Another time, another place, the inhabitants of Alpha encounter a different version of themselves, and he plays like an older, wiser, more like world-worn, travel-worn Paul. Really lovely performance. Some really great stuff in The Protectors. There's a 2-part episode of The Protectors that he's in called Wham, which is one of my favorite episodes of that show. I'm a big Protectors fan, as you know, Jack. I was once the proprietor. Well, I guess I am still. I am still the proprietor of to my knowledge, the only Protectors fan site on the internet. So, there you go.
Well, that's great, because I'm always looking because I always find the Protectors a little bit inaccessible just because there's so much of it. It's 52 episodes. So, and I know some of it's really good and some of it's not so good.
That's
so fair. I'm always looking for like recommendations of good episodes to get into, and you're saying that Wham is a good one.
Wham is a perfect one to start with if you're a Jerry Anderson fan, which if you're not, then you're on the wrong podcast, because that's all we talk about here.
Yes.
It's a 2-part episode, so it's a little bit more of a commitment, but it's got all 3 of your major characters in it. Harry Rule, Contessa DiContini, and Paul
Boucher.
Paul Boucher, thank you.
Yeah. You get mixed up because Tony Anholt plays it, and you mix it up with Tony Vadeschi as Space.
I almost said Tony Vadeschi, and I was like, that's not the other Tony Anholt part.
We're all over Space 1999 live action, all of that.
We
stuff
are.
Right now.
We are.
Yeah.
We're all over.
So
but it's got all of those. It's got a great guest cast, and it's a really interesting kind of example of what the show could have done if it had been a longer drama, if it had been given a bit more time and space to do what it does well, which is kind of like action adventure, actually trotting around in Europe, going to different cities. Exactly. So it has a lot of great stuff to work with. Yeah. Prentice Hancock, always a face I was excited to see when I was watching TV growing up. Whenever he turned up, I would cheer because he's just great, and was someone I looked up to as a child. So he will be very much missed, and I'm glad that we had the opportunity to share some of the earth with Prentice Hancock, and that we have the opportunity to enjoy his performances.
Absolutely.
Ever after.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Yep. Well, rest in peace, sir. Enjoy your trip beyond the moon, or however you want to phrase it. But That was lovely. Now we are going to get into our special assignment for this episode, which is Treasure Down Below.
I have received a report from Spectrum Intelligence. It will mean I have a special assignment for you.
Oh, beautiful.
But it's a sewer.
We'll need a team.
I hope you will forgive me.
We are going to be chatting about the Stingray episode, Treasure Down Below. Ben, why did we pick this particular episode?
Why did we pick this particular episode? Well, as I alluded to earlier, there's a bit of a hint about what I'm going to talk about later.
Okay.
But also, we just wanted to do something that was going to be really fun.
We wanted to do some Stingray.
And we were like,
both of us, when we were like, both of us were
Stingray.
like, we haven't done any Stingray yet on the podcast, so let's get into some Stingray. And of course, any of you who are Security Hazard followers will know that I reviewed the whole of Stingray on my blog, went into every single bit of detail on the show. You can read those articles on the Security Hazard blog right now. And I haven't, since doing those reviews, which was like 2022, 2023, I sat down and reviewed all of those episodes. I haven't watched any Stingray since then because I kind of, I did Stingray. I was like, really did it. So I was kind of looking for an opportunity to go and watch some Stingray again, kind of with fresh eyes and with some of that newly acquired knowledge that I gathered from doing all the research that I did for my reviews. And Treasure Down Below has always been and continues to be one of my favorite Stingray episodes. I think there is just so much about it that just works. First of all, I was amazed watching it this time around, just how much is packed into 25 minutes. It's so well paced. The whole thing, it just moves so fast and gets everything in. Got a bit of Stingray action in there. You've got some great character exploration going in there. You've got fantastic guest characters, some great locations. It's all in there. And this is only in production order, at least. This is only episode 5 of the series. Like, they hit their stride immediately. It's so good.
Unbelievable how far ahead of the game they were coming into this. And in a way, I guess it's because they had Fireball XL5 under their belt and were really well prepared to do more of the same, but on a bigger and better scale with more detail, better writing, I feel like, in Stingray, I personally think. Yeah, just
certainly more well-rounded characters, and that's particularly this episode really explores that beautifully. Yeah, so
everything you want in a half hour of kids TV, it's all there.
Exactly. So, script by Dennis Spooner, directed by Alan Patillo, first broadcast on the 14th of March, 1965. This was actually one of the later Stingray episodes to be broadcast. This was one of those early ones that was then sort of held back towards the end of the run.
Yeah, why was that, do you think?
There's all sorts of speculation as to why broadcast orders were figured out in the way that they were, but the general feeling was, take the early episodes and put them towards the end of the run, because sometimes, don't think this is the case for Stingray, but sometimes the early episodes tend to be the weaker ones. So if you put them towards the end of the broadcast run, it sort of doesn't put people off. It means that you take the episodes that you had from the kind of the meaty middle of the run and put them up front. That way you hook in your viewers and you don't mind later on if some of the episodes are a bit weak. But in the case of Stingray, I don't think that's actually... It's fine. I think the great thing about Stingray is it's consistent all the way through. There's no kind of weak spots. It stays good all the way through its 39 episodes. And Treasure Down Below is a great example where it's an early episode in the production run, but it's just fantastic. But that's also what's nice about it, is stands alone really nicely. It's just a fun adventure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it starts off with Captain Black on his ship, drunkenly steering a cruise liner. Looks like a cruise liner towards
This is
an iceberg.
this is a lovely thing because it's one of the complaints that people sometimes have about Stingray is that you've got Don Mason as Troy Tempest, and he has a very distinctive voice.
Yeah.
So whenever he plays a guest character, it's kind of like, oh, we've got Don Mason doing a guest character. It sounds just like Don Mason. Well, here, Don Mason really gives it his all to play
He
this.
really does. Yeah.
This character really goes for it.
It's definitely, I think, one of his best guest characters that he does. And I mean, the script delivers, like, it just, there's no subtlety about any of it. It is, well, he's a drunken sailor. That's what you have to do. And it's the very definition of kind of transatlantic. It's a very difficult accent to place exactly what he's doing, because he's trying to do a bit of that West Country English pirate voice, but he can't help but let his own Canadian tones come through there as well. So it's it's an unusual voice, but you know exactly what he's going for. And as you say, it doesn't sound like Troy at all.
Absolutely nailed it.
Yeah,
and the puppet is great as well. The huge eyebrows, which become more and more of a trope.
Yeah.
Oh boy. The massive eyebrows are great. He's also got this thing going on of like the Hood. He just sits around and talks to himself.
Yeah.
As he's working on his evil plan, he's like, haha, I've stolen the gold. And now I've abandoned my crew on an island. And just recounting.
He has to get us up to speed on what the plot is.
All his dangers. And it's done. I mean, it's done perfectly. He's like singing as he's doing it, and you're like, oh, this guy's drunk and telling himself how great he is. And it feels
my only question about that whole bit is, what type of ship is he steering in the first place? Because to me, it looks like a cruise liner. And although he says he abandoned his crew on an island, what about the passengers?
They're still on there.
Are they still on there? Yeah, or what? What's going on there? So I don't know. Maybe that was a slight miscommunication between the special effects department and the script, where it maybe should have looked more like an industrial type of ship.
That could be.
Yeah,
I like
that's a bit of a puzzle.
It is. I like to think he just completed a robbery. Yeah, and his getaway boat was just the first boat that he saw. So he just got on this boat. Liner. He just got on this boat and drove away. And now
that'll get me
drunk. And he's convinced himself that he's a pirate captain, but he's really just your common or ordinary everyday cruise liner hijacker.
Sure, why not? Yeah, but lovely setup to the episode. Perfect introduction to the whole thing. Really, really great. So then we cut to Casablanca, which is a really nice change of location. It's one of the things that makes this episode so distinctive, is the Casablanca setting, which is obviously only for the opening of the episode, but it's one of those things that's very memorable. That lovely model shot of Stingray just sitting in the bay at night time. It's beautiful. It looks so good. Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there any other Anderson episodes set in Casablanca that you know of? I can't.
Wow, you're really testing me there. I don't think so. At least it's not outright said that that's where they're going.
There might be a supercar.
Possibly.
Vaguely,
it might mention it. Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm not sure. So
but it's always lovely when Supermarionation Nation does settings. Yeah, just settings in other parts of the world. That globe-trotting feel is always really good fun, because it gives the costume department, the set department, everyone gets a chance to do something different. And in the case of this episode, Phones is wearing a fez.
Yes, fezzes are cool, as we used to say.
Yeah, as we used to say. Yeah, that's a really lovely moment because he's reading a supercar book
He
as
is.
well.
Listen,
Yeah.
Oink the seal is there for some reason.
Yeah, having a snooze next to him. This is when Oink was still around. Dennis Spooner was still trying to make Oink a thing, I guess, because he only turns up in Dennis Spooner episodes. It's worth saying if you spot that, you look at who's writing each of those episodes. It's only Dennis Spooner who tries to make Oink a thing.
Good point.
And he, let's be honest, he fails. But never mind. Yeah, just a lovely setup. The lovely setup with where the characters are and things like that. The fact that Phones is stuck on Stingray minding the shop while Troy and Marina go out on their date, but it's not a date. But you have that Atlanta calling in and wanting to know where Troy is, and Phones kind of having to give the game away. And delicious little bit of character drama set up there, which is just amazing for a kids action adventure show, that you get this juicy bit of tension going on there. The love triangle is just probably more than any other Stingray episode. This one really plays with that love triangle.
It really does. And there's so many small touches that just nail it, that are just like perfect little moments. Like when Atlanta asks to speak to Troy, Phones has a long pause, and the camera just kind of, lingers on Phones's expressionless face. but the puppeteers communicate so well that he's, a little bit embarrassed, a little bit, he's kind of swaying a little bit, not quite sure what to do. That like small moment of awkwardness just makes him feel like a real character. It tells the story that they're telling so well, and all those little small moments build up to the point where you can just watch it, and it's so watchable, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. But what I also like about this is not only do we have Troy's love triangle kind of being explored, but also the dynamic between the 3 Stingray crew members being tested in this episode, where Phones, ruins Troy and Marina's evening and upsets Troy. Troy's upset with everyone in this episode. I mean, it's not a great episode for Troy.
No.
But yeah, Troy's upset with Phones. Troy gets upset with Marina for storming out. He's upset with Atlanta for pestering them, I guess. Phones kind of gets... Now, I want to ask you this question. Does Phones deliberately bring up the fact that Atlanta called as a means of sabotaging Troy's date with Marina? Or do you think he's just genuinely being like, oh, by the way, Atlanta called, and he doesn't think about the consequences?
Well, I think...
Is that a moment where Phones is being a little bit malevolent, about the whole thing?
I think there's a moment there where he feels rejected by Troy, where Troy's basically treating Phones like he's being... We're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit plot-wise.
A little bit, yeah.
But Phones has been offered a treasure map by a man who just wandered onto Stingray to try and con him into buying a treasure map.
We're definitely going to unpack that.
but he does bring up this fact that Atlanta called in to Troy in front of Marina after giving her a look. Like Troy says, no, I'm not going to lend you any money to buy a treasure map. And Phones takes a moment to pause, turns and looks at Marina, and then says loudly to Troy, oh, by the way, Atlanta called. So it's clearly a means of political leverage.
Yeah, I actually, when watching it this time around, hadn't spotted that little, but I was genuinely wondering whether he just kind of bungles the situation or whether he deliberately was a little bit spiteful, which is so unlike Phones, and that's why it's quite impactful, I suppose, is because it's not like Phones to deliberately be nasty to someone.
He's such a nice guy normally, so it has that much more impact because it's a bit off. I wish there was a way to know which character was puppeteered by which puppeteer, and someone there may be a way to
Oh,
know, and
wouldn't that
someone
be
may
great?
know, but there's
Yeah.
definite performance notes in each character,
Yeah.
and it would be interesting to know who did what.
Yeah,
in different subtle
absolutely.
moments.
That would be
Things like
absolutely
that work.
extraordinary. Yeah, yeah. Well,
But yeah.
yeah, we should talk about the thing that leads us up to this point, which is, and basically the thing that thrusts this episode into full gear, is that, as you say, man walks onto Stingray because security. Who cares? Man just walks up to phones on the deck of Stingray.
How did he get aboard is my question.
I mean, he's
he
a
just-
salty sea dog. He's probably got his own little rowing boat that he just saw Stingray out there and thought, I bet there's a chump on that on that ship who would be able to go and pick up my treasure.
That is definitely how that happened.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's the same guy who sold treasure to Captain Black. If Captain Black also has a treasure map. From
Oh,
this guy.
maybe the whole thing was engineered. Yeah, maybe
The
he's
whole
got,
thing's his fault.
because that's it. He's probably got several copies of this treasure map and he's just selling them to any idiot. Maybe he's employed by the aliens so that they keep bringing
Right.
ships out to the treasure so that they keep getting more treasure. And
He does have a similar head shape to the underwater race.
Well,
There's a-
large, very, very large.
Large and heavy in the jaw.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the great thing about
interesting.
this character, so the original script for Treasure Down Below does exist. And
Right.
the
Tell me a little
wonderful
bit
thing-
more about that, because I don't have a copy of that handy. Is it on the Blu-ray
it's-
set?
I think no, it was talked about in it's privately owned, and I think it was talked about in an issue of Fab magazine. And I happened to be researching it when I was doing my review all that time ago.
Right.
And the one thing I remember distinctly is that character had a name, and the character's name was Parker, which I think is appropriate. And the script very specifically talks about the actor Robert Newton,
Yes.
who played Long John Silver in Treasure Island. And, it's suggested, hints of that actor should be in this performance. And I think it's fair to say that certainly the vocal performance is 100% Long John Silver in Treasure Island. There is, again, just zero restraint there. It's just like, well, that's what you asked for, so that's what I'm going to give you. Is it Ray Barrett doing that voice?
I believe so. So.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but
it's fantastic. It's so good.
Brilliant voice.
It's a wonderful little anachronism, really, because you're like, there's a guy in Casablanca in the year 2064 when the series is set. Do they really talk like that still?
It's so funny.
And
Robert Easton's phones is just lovely in the kind of like hayseed getting suckered into a scheme. I mean, it's right out of like a movie like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I mean, it's lovely the way he plays the scene.
Yeah.
And, this is someone who grew up in the American South, hearing all different kinds of North Carolina accents and Georgia accents. Robert Easton just nails the accent, in case you were wondering.
Well, of course he does.
To native speakers, he's just perfect. So that's being
absolutely
a dialect expert. He always does a great job as Phones. So it's a lovely scene.
Yeah. So through a little bit of extortion, Phones manages to get the money, $500 for a treasure map. Would you fall for that? I mean, I say fall for that. I mean, it turned out to be accurate. It turned out to be a real map.
Yeah, that's something we can unpack later as we start to dig into this. Was it really a real map, or was it? I guess we're kind of unfolding that as we go.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a difficult time telling how much $500 is in this universe.
That's true.
Because at the time, $500 would have been a lot more than it is to us today.
Yeah. But it still seems today like quite a lot to pay for a treasure map, I suppose.
Yeah, from a stranger in Casablanca who just turned up on your boat while you were hitting the sauce,
Yeah.
having a nap.
Yeah.
It's a
Which is what's
weird.
great about Troy is right to be outraged and
Yes.
baffled by the whole that's what's really nice is Troy is, whilst he is the villain of the piece, he is also totally logical in
Yes.
disbelieving everything that's happening.
Yes.
And that's a really well carefully constructed bit of business going on there.
Yes.
Because
I
it
think
would
kids
be easy
watching.
to hate Troy if he wasn't making a very good point.
Yes. I think kids watching could identify with both sides of it, of like wanting to go and have a treasure map and treasure hunt, Stingray on a treasure hunt. Ooh, it's like an instant like kid appeal. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you know, I don't know any kid that would part with $500 just for a treasure map.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I was too practical as a child.
I don't know. No, I totally agree. I totally agree. It's like, oh, come on, phones. You're not gonna really fall for that, are you? Like, no, he really does. So that's all. Yeah, that's really nicely played, and I like that you get some tension between our two heroes, and just
Mhm.
that whole trio gets disrupted, and there's a feeling of like,
Yeah.
they're far from home as well. The fact that they're all the
Mhm.
way out in Casablanca, it's like they very much have to rely on each other in those situations. And the fact that they're arguing and fighting just is a really nice bit of tension. But it's not lingered on for too long, and it doesn't turn
No.
particularly unpleasant because obviously
And
the
it
plot has to just
yeah.
keep moving. But
It feels like a
yeah,
bit of justice for Phones, who's there's kind of a thing where Troy Phones does all the work and Troy takes all the credit.
right.
It's in Stingray.
Yeah,
So it's sort of like Phone's revenge in a way,
yeah.
which is nice. I felt watching it as a kid, like, why doesn't he like stand up to him more? Why doesn't Phones push back against Troy's kind of pigheadedness? And this
Yeah,
is an episode where you finally get to see that, where you can enjoy a little bit of friction between the crew. And
yeah.
of course, Phones drops his bombshell that Atlanta and Troy have a date going on tomorrow when they get back
Mm,
to Marineville.
yeah.
Marina is in tears over this, and I'd forgotten, since I, like yourself, hadn't watched Stingray in a minute. I had forgotten what a beautiful puppet Marina is. It's just really well
Oh yeah,
sculpted, really
yeah.
expressive face. They've put a nice
Because
candle
it
in the
has to
foreground.
be. Yeah, it has to be
It's just
expressive.
it does, and they've added a little tear to her eye. It's just really well executed.
Lighting in that is gorgeous as well. Like a real,
Mhm.
it. We should say the scene in that cafe interior is really nicely. The set is dressed to perfection. It's lit in a sort of romantic way. Just stunning. Like just so good. Um, so yeah, all the elements kind of come together in that moment because it's not in the dialogue, because I don't think the dialogue would be as audacious as to go, Troy's been cheating on Atlanta with Marina. So it's all in the subtlety. It's all in the context of the scene, and I think that is more than a kids TV show
Absolutely.
deserves.
Yeah.
And that's why we love it. That's why we love Supermarination, is because it goes above and beyond
Yeah.
to communicate these things so effectively. It's fantastic.
But by doing less,
By doing
weirdly,
less.
it's
Yeah.
communicating with subtext, which is such a weird thing to try to do with puppets. With puppets, there's such this tendency to overact, to overdo, to overperform, because you're trying to express through an inanimate object. So you're like, "Ugh, I'm pushing, I'm making it big,"
Yeah.
and they reel all that back in and are like, you know what, just make it small. And
Yeah.
between that and the vocal performances, which are huge, it
Yeah.
just balances perfectly.
Well,
Somewhere,
rather than relying solely on the puppet to deliver the performance, this is where
right?
Alan Patillo really succeeds as a director, is because he uses lighting and he uses camera, and the editing as well is super important
Yes,
to do all the emoting that the puppets can't do, uh,
exactly.
and
Exactly.
therefore therefore it just works. And that's why it's so hard to define exactly what it is about Supermarination that works so well. It's because it's all of those elements working together. It's not just the puppets, it's
greater than the sum
everything.
of the parts. Yeah,
Exactly. But speaking of Marina, I want to kind of fast forward a little bit to Phones asks her to forgive him for ruining the evening.
Oh,
When arguably, I mean, it's not really. It is him who kind of addressed the elephant in the room of saying, "Oh, Atlanta has a date with him," and da da da. But really, I mean, it's Troy who is the love rat here, who kind of is up to no good. And I think that's why Marina partners up or takes Phones' side in this, but also expresses her own independence and decides, no, you know what? We are going to go after that treasure. Any just thoughts on that moment where she decides, yeah, I'm going to take control of Stingray? First of all, she's learned how to steer Stingray in the space of 5 episodes, which I think is amazing. I think it's great that that behind the scenes, it's like, oh, she had some training. Like, she is a fully paid up member of the Wasps at this point. Like, she can do just as much as the other guys can do, and maybe they underestimate her a little bit.
But I think
it's
that's
a really
huge
strong character moment for her.
It is. Marina later on in the show gets underutilized. They start to use her less and less, which is such a shame because she's a great role model, I think, for women in a situation where they don't have a voice, where she still finds a way to access her power. She still finds a way to assert herself, despite the fact that she's been, silenced. And, some versions of the Stingray canon would say that that's a result of something that Titan did that caused her to lose her voice. I don't know whether that's official canon or not.
I would say so. I think so, because it's in the audio story. It's basically in Marina Speaks, the audio album. So it's like only one step removed from the TV series, really. So I certainly accept that as canon. It's not something that necessarily dominates my view of her character and how the series functions. But it's a nice thing to kind of keep in mind. But yeah, I just think it's great that she takes that moment to take control of the story. And it's unfortunately one of the few times where that happens. It does happen more often than you'd think, but she certainly is. She's more than just window dressing. She's not just sitting there idly.
She's very active.
She is
an active participant in the story, which is great. The puppetry, I have to highlight just how good the puppetry is of her by herself effectively. I mean, she has Oink, but her and Oink, who don't talk at all, playing a whole scene together, and exactly what the scene is meant to be, exactly what's being communicated in the scene. It's just great direction. It's great puppeteering. It's really well done. Well done.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah.
Fast forward. You want to talk about the treasure map itself?
The treasure map itself, I don't know if I have too much to say about it. It's basically a map of an area that just says there is treasure here.
I what strikes me about it is that it doesn't have any identifiable landmarks on it.
So, that is a bit of a problem.
There's no coordinates. There's the latitude and longitude is not labeled.
Yeah. See, they missed it. They did miss a slight trick there, actually. What they could have done in that situation, because I'm pretty sure Phones immediately knows where this area is and is able to identify it.
Sure.
And I think it would have been great if he maybe couldn't have identified it and didn't know. But because Marina is of the ocean, of the sea, she is the one who is able to take them to the right place, which, of course, she does end up doing anyway. But it would have been nice if there had been a little explanation of that. Of course, I suppose the other argument is that maybe off screen there was a conversation between Phones and the guy who sold him the map, saying, well, here's the map of the area just to let you know the area is around about over here. But as you say, without any landmarks, I agree. Not much use as a treasure.
Well,
map,
maybe the guy was a con man. Just walk with me for a moment.
Okay.
Maybe the guy was a con man, and the map is totally fake.
Right.
But Marina is so ticked off with Troy.
Yeah.
And so eager to help Phones out for being a nice guy and for apologizing, and because she sees that he's been taken for a ride with this obviously fake treasure map.
Right.
She decides to take them to a place where she knows there's treasure. So she knows there's a trap there, but she leads them into it deliberately.
She deliberately leads them into a trap.
To peeve off Troy and to bring Phones to the treasure that he wants.
Even though it might...
Thoughts?
Well, only that it puts them in quite apparent danger straight away, and I would have thought Marina would have known that.
Yes. Well, clearly they all should have known it, because the whirlpool that they immediately fall into when they get there is on the treasure map. Like the whirlpool
it is
there. Yeah, have another
I need to look closer at that treasure map. Clearly, yeah, that's hilarious.
Let me
that they stumble straight into that danger. That's incredible. Yeah. Oh dear.
Yeah, let's have a look at this treasure map.
Oh gosh, you're right. Yes.
So there's a whirlpool right on the left.
I mean, for listeners, it's basically says here's a giant cavern, here's the entrance to the cavern, and here's a whirlpool.
Yes.
So not trying too hard. Oh, I remember now from when I was doing this for my review, some of that paperwork on the table, I think is Fireball XL5 production paperwork as well.
It is.
Which is interesting.
Yes.
So just any old papers that were lying around on the table at that time. Yeah, no, fair enough. That
lots of decorative details around here.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it looks lovely. It's a really nice. I'm pretty sure the puppet scale version of the map doesn't match that at all. But
no.
But
correct.
Yeah, that's just a minor complaint. Yeah, for sure.
It's all good fun. It's all good fun.
So, I mean, the big climax to partway through the episode is that they go through this whirlpool. Phones, and it's a bit of a weird bit of direction. Phones falls from the sort of top deck of Stingray down to the bottom, along with his treasure map. And you're left with that image before it fades to black of Phones passed out on the floor. And it's very dramatic and kind of feels like the culmination of all this tension and stuff that's been building up between the three characters. And it's resulted in someone getting injured, basically, because all these characters are having disagreements with each other. It's just really nicely played. And as I say, it all happens within sort of 10-15 minutes of the episode that we get to that point. Just really well done, really well set up. Moves forward really great. And then Troy's basic conclusion is, well, we're in the treasure area, so I guess we'll go out and look for it, which is exactly the point, I feel like, where you needed him to bend a little bit, just so he could get the story going a bit more.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, back at Marineville, immediately, pretty much, the search for Stingray starts with Atlanta and Commander Shaw. You know, they've divided up this map and they're going to go... They've got all these rescue launchers out searching for Stingray. And I think it's great that they don't mess about with that. They just immediately start searching for Stingray. I think it points to the efficiency of the Wasps. I think it's a great demonstration of their global capabilities. And also from a storytelling point of view, it's good because we're not messing about. We don't have any debating on, oh, should we go and search for Stingray or not? Nope, they just immediately get into it. Now, you could argue that it doesn't actually give Atlanta and Commander Shaw very much to do in the episode, but I think that's okay because we're more interested in the main plot anyway.
Yeah, well, there's no Titan and X20 subplot in this episode either.
Yeah.
I think that's a sign of mature storytelling, of not cramming too much into a particular story.
Exactly.
You know, not trying to do everything in a single episode. But in the process of doing that, they created an episode that we think, most people think, I think, well, we'll get into that when we get into viewer comments, what people think of this episode.
Yeah.
But it's considered a classic, and that's because of not doing too much. So
it's
nice.
simple. It's very straightforward. It's the episode with the treasure and everything that entails, and it's just does what it says on the tin. Very straightforward. Just get straight to it. So anyway, as soon as Troy and Phones and Marina encounter the treasure, they are captured by two of the weirdest looking aliens that Stingray, and that's saying something, and it's all because of one thing. It's because of the guy with the candelabra on his head.
It really is.
Should
we talk about the candelabra?
I mean, I don't know how much there is to say, really. I just want to know. I remember when I was reviewing, I made a point of not going back and reading my review for this episode because I didn't want to repeat myself too much. But I do remember speculating on whether the candelabra was an indication of rank or not. Like, why? Why is he wearing it? What's the point? Is he wearing it, or is it a part of his head? Is it something that's been skewered into him? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't really know. I'm intrigued by it. I love this idea that they've been hanging out with the treasure for so long that them and the treasure are essentially one thing.
Yeah, they are treasure monsters, basically.
They are. They're like the dragon that's been guarding the treasure so long. It's merged.
Yeah,
and I think that's a brilliant.
I like the idea. Because if it is just a piece of headwear, there was a moment where that guy looked at the candelabra and thought, I'm going to put that on my head.
This
could be a really nice hat, and I could carry this off. And what I then, yes, exactly like your very lovely hat that you have right there, of course. But imagine that, but it's a candelabra sticking out the top of your head.
I don't have a candelabra to hand, unfortunately.
Well, shame on you. But
a major oversight.
But what I want to know is, did he then turn to his junior officer and say, I put a candelabra on my head. What do you think of that? And said junior officer is supposed to turn around and say, yeah, looks all right. I like the look of that.
Yeah. Well, we think of them automatically because we've seen so many of these types of stories where there's two villains and one is superior and the other is the lieutenant, sort of the relationship that Troy and Phones have. We assume that they're, a leader and a junior and they interact with each other that way. But we don't really know what their relationship with each other is.
It does sort of come across that way, I think. I mean, one of them wearing a candelabra on their head, so immediately go, well, he's the boss, clearly.
Candelabra.
He's the guy who knows what he's doing.
Yeah, that's a clear. It's like a sergeant major, like 3 stripes to be a sergeant major. You've got 3. You can have 3 candles on your head.
Yeah. Does he light the candles on special occasions?
Oh man, maybe on Easter and Christmas.
Well, for his birthday, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Now, he can't blow out his own candles on his birthday, though. That's the only problem.
Maybe if he unloaded his blunderbuss that he carries and used it to somehow angle the air that he blows at his head. I'm just speculating now.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's a whole. Dare I say, there's a whole canon. See what I did? There's a whole canon to explore.
Ooh. There's a whole candelabra verse out there.
Exactly. So Troy, Phones, and Marina get captured. They're put in jail, and suddenly, who comes through the wall? It's Captain Black, but not the Captain Black that we all immediately thought of when I said Captain Black. Yeah. It's the other Captain Black from the beginning of this episode.
Right.
Who knows how long he's been down there, living in there. He just pops out and says, "Oh, I know how to escape." And I would have thought, and obviously for the sake of the story, we go along with it. But if Troy and Phones had thought about it for a moment, they would have gone, wait, if this guy knows how to escape, why hasn't he done that yet?
Hmm. There's just a kind of lack of critical thinking on the part of Troy and Phones at times like this.
But hey,
Like,
they went,
it's a
went
treasure
with the
map. I'll just
treasure.
go ahead and spend all this money on it. Here's a guy who wants to lead us to safety. I'm sure has no ulterior motives whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he played really lovely. Don Mason talking to himself. Great performance.
Yeah. And to be honest, in those moments, you can tell there's a little bit of Troy coming through in Captain Black. Only the tiniest amount. But when you do hear the two characters talking to each other, you can sort of tell. But I mean, if you didn't know, you probably wouldn't notice. But once you hear it, you can't unhear it. But yeah, you get that moment where it's very clear that Captain Black is just not on their side whatsoever. The escape goes wrong. It all happens quite quickly. Troy punches Captain Black in the face, which looks about as good as any hand-to-hand combat looks when it comes to the puppets. There's a reason why they don't do it very much, and it's because it kind of looks a bit cheesy and naff. But that's kind of okay in the context of this episode. But Troy escapes. We don't know where he's escaped to. He just kind of disappears. One moment he's in the scene, the next he's gone. Meanwhile, Phones and Marina have been captured, but Phones is quick to be like, don't worry, Troy will save us. Which, of course, sets us up for the whole climax of the episode, which is the torture scene.
Yes.
On the racks. Troy is lurking around, trying to figure out what to do, while Phones and Marina are getting stretched on a medieval torture device. The reason why they do it in the first place is because the villains are keen to know whether these devices still work, which I think is great. That's a good enough reason as any to pull out your medieval torture devices to see whether they still work or not.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
I don't know if it's just the particular time in which I grew up, but I feel like there was a plethora of these torture racks in movies and television in my childhood.
Oh, it's a very common trope.
It was in Scooby-Doo, it's in Doctor Who, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
In the
Well,
Muppets.
do you know what? It's because it is one of the very few torture devices that is kind of kid friendly in the sense that you don't see any of the injury that happens. It's not like someone getting poked in the eye with a burning steak or something. It's very the actual pain is invisible, I suppose.
Yes.
So from that point of view, it's kid friendly.
Yes, I think kid friendly torture devices could be a good tagline for this podcast.
Yeah.
Really useful phrase.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there we go. So, but what's great about that is what sells the fact that the torture is working. Bearing in mind, Marina is silent, so you're not going to find out from her. So it all relies on Robert Easton as Phones giving his performance of the groans and the moans of, ow, this is really hurting. And then you have the sweat that's been sprinkled onto the puppet's face. What I find odd about that scene is that they don't substitute Phone's head for the frowner expression in that moment. He's just smiling away with his normal, what's supposed to be a neutral Phone's expression, but of course it's smiling because Phone's is
got a little smile
kind of person, which doesn't quite. I was like, they missed a trick there. They could have made him look more uncomfortable than he is.
That's true.
But then maybe that would make the scene a bit too scary, a bit too real. So
Phones kind of likes it, Jack. He's kind of into it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I don't get that, but I see the despicable direction you're trying to go there, and I'm keen to avoid it because these are beloved characters. And anyway, the resolution to the whole thing actually comes about. It's very simple. Troy fires a cannon at them.
Which I like, because you see the
It's cool.
cannons beforehand.
Yeah.
You see them sitting around in the treasure room, so that it's kind of a Chekhov's gun, if you're familiar with that term.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a nice setup, and it comes out of nowhere. You're kind of like, how is Troy going to solve this? And he actually does come up with a creative, kind of surprising way to solve the situation. It ties everything together nicely. It's one of those endings. Sometimes with these 25-minute stories, they just end, and you're like, it didn't feel like satisfying or complete. And this is a nice ending. It's a big boom in classic Super Mario Nation fashion. There's a explosion.
Yep.
The villains get covered with polystyrene blocks.
Yep.
It just nails the tone.
Yep. And then when Stingray escapes, you've got them tied up. So it's like, the villains got their just desserts. It's all the good has triumphed over evil. Everything is as it should be. And then we get back to Marineville, and we have that really nice a scene that they didn't actually really have to do. But for the purposes of the characters, it's really great that they did the whole wrap up with basically Phones having to pay the bill for Troy and Atlanta's date after all. I think it's a really nice, satisfying way to conclude it and kind of tie up all of that tension there. It does mean that Atlanta has forgiven Troy completely for taking Marina out. But then I suppose it's all kind of goes unsaid anyway, whether Troy is trying to date Marina or whether they're just friends having a nice dinner, It's all in the subtext. It's all whether you choose to read that into it or not, which I think is great. It means it functions perfectly as a fluffy bit of kids' TV, or if you want to read more drama into it, it's there if you want to. I think that's perfect.
Yeah. I'll tell you the way that I saw it, which is a bit odd. But as a kid, when I saw Troy and Atlanta announcing in front of everyone that they're going on a date, and Marina doesn't react this time. She doesn't burst into tears and walk out of the room.
Yeah.
But she stays next to Phones. And so as a kid, I was like, maybe there's something between her and Phones.
Yeah.
There's
you could read it that way.
That love triangle could have been split into a nice, more symmetrical square. But, it never quite goes in that direction.
Yeah.
Elsewhere,
leave that all up to the fan fiction writers. That's what I say.
That's
That's a whole other territory.
No comment.
yeah. Well, I should say there's some amazing fan fiction out there that you should read if you enjoy that sort of thing. But yeah. Well, it just remains for us to go through some of our viewers' comments. We had some lovely people's opinions on this episode that I wanted to address. So let's start with Class 87 Fan 54 says, not one of Troy's best episodes, but at least Phones gets some time in the spotlight. Captain Black, Ebron, and Trell are underrated villains. Love Barry Gray's score for this episode, especially the cue that plays during the whirlpool scene. Yes, Barry Gray's music is the other important ingredient when it comes to selling the subtext that's going on in everything that's happening during the episode.
Definitely.
Very, very important indeed. Dave Griffiths says, an interesting episode as we see Phones reading up on Supercar, Troy double dating, Phones blackmailing Troy for money, and we see the operation of the rear fins in the whirlpool. That's very true. Yes. We see them get like kind of bent out of shape and stuff. So it just means that, they are doing something. Coco9728 says, why is Troy so evil in this episode? Though I do love how we get to see more of Phones. He's a great character. And I agree.
Evil is such a strong word.
Evil is a strong word, but I think it plays into what we said before, where it's like Troy is nasty and flawed in this episode, but you don't, I wouldn't hate him because he is being logical. He's just going about it in a particularly unpleasant way, which is so true for so many other Troy moments. Is what makes him engaging as a character. Is he's not perfect all the time.
Right.
It's kind of why it's what makes Troy Tempest more interesting than a character like Steve Zodiac, because Steve is just perfect all the time. He's always doing the right thing. He's always, well, for the most part, he's saying the right thing, other than being incredibly sexist all the way through Fireball XL5. But other than that, he's generally considered to be an all-round good guy, whereas Troy is deeply flawed, and he gets called out for being a naughty boy. Sometimes I was going to use a stronger word than that, but I wasn't going to.
There are stronger words that apply.
Exactly. And then just one more comment from Simpsons Clips 24 says 2 things. One was the entire budget of this episode basically drunk by Phones and Captain Black, which is true. There's a lot of drinking going on. Phones, I think, has a bottle that he falls asleep next to on the deck of Stingray, which is one of many times when we see him asleep next to a bottle of drink. And then 2, never trust an alien who looks like he has the face of a Teletubby and wears a candelabra on his head. Well,
I don't know.
Teletubbies is not where I would have gone with it, but you know what? Fair enough. I can see that.
I respect the candelabra personally. If I saw somebody wearing a candelabra, out in public, on the subway, wherever, I would be like, props to you for wearing a candelabra.
I probably wouldn't address it.
Exactly.
I would say, you know what? You made your choice. You do you. Fair enough. I don't think I could carry it off personally.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I could light it up.
Very good. You had that one ready.
What did
I? Don't tell me otherwise. You didn't just come up with that. That's for sure.
Are you saying I waxed on too long?
Stop, please stop, because I have nothing to come back to that with. Absolutely nothing in the tank.
You mean you have nothing to come back to it, Wick?
No. Sorry.
No, too far?
No, you couldn't have 3 in a row. 2 was good, but 3, no, you just pushed it too far. Anyway, that was
pushing things too far.
Well, now we're going to get into your mystery segment of the episode. This is
goody.
Big Ben Strikes Again. Worth pointing out that Ben also puts together those intros for each segment, so it's all his taste that goes into that. I approve of it. I will say I do approve very much.
The sort of high quality video production and animation you've come to expect from these intros, carrying on that high standard.
Of course. Right. I'm off script. I've got nothing. This is a complete mystery.
You've got nothing to say.
I've got nothing.
Jack, I love a good knockoff. I love a good knockoff, a good ripoff, a good, I'm just fascinated with that kind of taking something great and then making a cheap and cheerful version that somehow doesn't do any of the things that the original did, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Something that I find fascinating about that. Well, I'm not going to talk about any of that today. I just want to share with you some of the greatest original works of Jerry Anderson merchandising that I've found from across the internet. I've just gathered together this collection to share with you.
Oh, amazing.
Really interesting, really original pieces of merchandising. They're not all Anderson related. Like this first one that I'm going to start with.
Okay.
This is a Land of the Giants merchandise, the Irwin Allen show.
Okay. Yeah.
Oops, it's not.
No, it isn't. that's clearly supposed to be Supercar, I think.
Right.
Try and describe this for the benefit of our audio listeners. What Ben has accidentally brought up on his screen is a model of Supercar that is completely white. It has a blue transparent canopy. and it says, it's hard to see what it says on it. It's got a sticker that says Space Sled on it.
Right. So this is the Remco Land of the Giants Space Sled. And I'm looking at it here on the Land of the Giants Collectibles website. So thank you to them for posting all these pictures and information about this product. As you may have guessed, this product was not originally designed as a Land of the Giants product.
You could say that.
In fact, it looks just like Supercar.
It's not a bad Supercar either.
So much so to the point that there's actually a little Mike Mercury in the
cockpit. There is a little Mike Mercury in there, isn't there?
Of this Supercar.
Yeah.
Basically, what this...
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
What this product is, it was originally designed as a Supercar merch, the company Remco, based in the US. And what we have here is a toy that follows specific patterns that are controlled by spindles within it. So there's an elaborate set of instructions you should be able to see on your screen now.
Yes,
give you an
very
idea.
Interesting. Sort of different. There's lots of photos of different things that I can't see specifically what they're doing, but they're
if we can zoom in,
manipulating the inside of this supercar. Sorry, not supercar. Land of Giants Space Sled. And they are so what does that affect the way that the thing moves then? Does it sort of steer around by itself?
Right. So if we go back to the beginning here, you can see there's at the bottom of that box, there's a bunch of different patterns. And when you put in those different plastic circles, the toy then, once you've put in the batteries and switched it on, it follows those different paths based on what disc you
presumably
install.
That was a feature of the original Supercar toy that this was based on.
Correct. In fact, it was exactly the same. So what they've done here, Remco, is they said, remember back when we licensed that Jerry Anderson product for Supercar? Well, we've got this new license for Land of the Giants. What if we just repainted that toy and called it something else, like Space Sled?
Wow.
And it's funny because...
Now, I don't know Land of the Giants, but I'm guessing that nothing that looked like Supercar turns up in that show. I'm just going to guess.
At the top of the page here, you can see the only major vehicle that appears in Land of the Giants. It's that red thing at the left-hand corner. It's a kind of spaceship, not really a spaceship. Yeah. It's not even in scale with this thing. Like there's a lot more space inside of it. There's a whole crew inside there. Not like Mike Mercury, who's pretty much on a solo trip here.
Yeah. So there is nothing about this Supercar toy that has been repurposed that actually has anything to do with Land of the Giants either then.
Right. So it's sort of a worst of both worlds situation where they were taking something that's clearly should have been, left to be Supercar, or at least rebranded as something even more generic than that.
Right.
Like maybe just a generic Space Sled could have been have been pulled off, but no, they doubled down and paid the price.
Fair enough. Yeah, okay. Well, I'd never seen that before. That's very interesting. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Me.
So, but maybe you're not in the mood for that anymore. You need something higher quality, something more authentic. Let's have a look at this.
Okay. The Doomsday Planet by Harl Vincent. Is this a book?
This is a paperback book. The Doomsday Planet is the novel in question, but on the cover, we can clearly see
it's Fireball XL5.
Like Fireball XL5.
And I'm guessing this is the book that has nothing to do with Fireball XL5 whatsoever. And it's a very carefully taken photograph where all of the sort of key identifiers, like things like XL5 being written on the side of it, have been very carefully obscured by reflected light. It's a very shiny image of Fireball XL5, which means you can't You can't see that it doesn't say Fireball XL5 on it, but it obviously is that. Yes, so let's read a little bit about what the Doomsday Planet is about. It says, on the edge of space, the planet Ormin spun like a vast spider web, dooming all who came within its reach to a living death.
Sounds very
Sounds
XL
not like a Fireball XL5 episode at all.
So
Yeah.
this book was published, this edition of the book, I should say, was published by Tower Books, an American company, as you can see here on the Internet Science Fiction Database, a great place to look up books. The artist of the cover is not credited, so we don't know who did this or why, what the plan was, if they used a Fireball XL5 toy and photographed it, or if it's a painting. I can't really even tell.
Honestly, it's quite a nice model of XL5. And this was published in 1968.
This edition is 1968 that I'm looking at.
This edition is 1968. Yeah, I mean, it looks better than a toy, so I would assume it's a model that someone has gotten. It looks pretty good, actually, as an XL5 model, certainly. Too good, really, since it isn't actually supposed to be Fireball XL5 in the first place. And particularly because this was published in America, and because Fireball XL5 was, the only it was networked on NBC. It's kind of impressive, really, that they chose Fireball XL5 of all things to be on the front cover. I would have thought that was just too recognizable, but apparently
I would have thought so too. But there's this kind of this attitude that the Anderson shows might be more generic, and it's partially because of some things that happened later on that attitude started to prevail, and I'll get into that as I go here. But
okay, all right,
yeah, that's enough of the Doomsday Planet. By all accounts, reading about it, not too notable of a book.
Right.
But maybe
it sounds like fairly generic sci-fi fare, really.
Yeah, a little bit. So what if you wanted something, a little bit more literary? Perhaps something something like I don't know. Something like The Mind.
Wow. I very much, if you're listening on audio, I'm going to try my best to describe what I'm looking at here, but I recommend coming and looking at the video. So it's a book called The Mind Worm, which is a collection of the best science fiction stories. And the front cover is, to put it simply, it's a out of focus, very poor photograph of the JR-21 Thunderbird 3 toy. I think it's the JR-21 Thunderbird 3.
I think you're correct.
Yeah.
I think you're correct.
But it's just such a bad photo. And maybe that's supposed to point to the weird, mind-wormy nature of the stories. It's all meant to be a little bit out of focus and distorted and science fiction, but kind of turned on its head a little bit, maybe. But it's also so obviously Thunderbird 3 that it's unforgivable in a way. But they've obviously tried to obscure the fact that it's Thunderbird 3, but they've done so by choosing an out of focus image, which certainly doesn't make me want to buy the book particularly.
As a Thunderbirds fan, probably not.
No, not really.
So this book is published by Tandem in the UK, as you can see by the prices there.
Three shillings and sixpence, I believe. Yeah.
Right. Again, artist uncredited and unknown. It's so even less information. Particularly striking to me that it's a UK publisher doing a large photo of Thunderbird 3 in 1967, when Thunderbird was sort of, had just crested the wave of its popularity.
Recognizable, that's for sure. Yes,
very well known.
Yeah.
Okay. The interesting thing about the Mindworm is that when I was earlier, I sounded really facetious when I was talking about this as great literature.
Right.
But actually, this is a republication of this book, the Best Science Fiction Stories Anthology from 1951.
I see.
And this is
Okay.
actually a serious anthology series of the best science fiction published by Fell's Science Fiction Library. And
Yeah.
some of the names on this list of stories that are in the book,
I
Ray
mean,
Bradbury,
Ray Bradbury was the one that stood out immediately. Yeah.
Richard Matheson, who wrote a lot of Twilight Zone and
Hmm.
wrote the story that inspired I Am Legend,
Yeah.
uh, wrote Duel, which inspired Steven Spielberg, Alfred Bester, who wrote The Stars, My Destination, A.E. Van Vogt, who contributed to Star Trek. There's actually some heavyweight stories,
Yeah.
heavyweight authors who wrote this. Even To Serve Man is a famous short story that was adapted for the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
So all of these, legitimate stories were republished. I shouldn't say all, because some of them were left out for this edition.
Yes.
Were
Yeah.
republished under this cover, which is
Oh, that's such a
astonishing.
shame, actually. Yeah, because it makes it look so cheap when it's actually got some gold in it.
It does, but it kind of has there's a kind of charm to how terrible it is,
Yeah.
which is, if I saw this book in a used bookstore, I would definitely pick it up purely on the basis of how
Oh yeah, you'd immediately
cheap and
go, I want to
cheerful
know
it
what's
is.
going on in there. Yeah, absolutely. It actually reminds me of the fact that I used to, speaking of science fiction short stories from that era, I used to listen to a lot of X-1.
Yes,
Do you know,
so
are
did
you
I.
familiar with that? So it's an old radio anthology series of short science fiction stories that were dramatized. Just if you enjoy that Fireball XL5 feel of classic sci-fi from the sort of 50s and 60s, X-1 is a really fun thing to before there were podcasts. That's what I would
It was
listen to.
X-1.
Was
And most of
X-1.
that is available on the Internet Archive, absolutely
Exactly.
free. So you
Yeah.
can just pop along there and enjoy yourself some X-1.
Yeah.
It's a
It's
lovely,
really good fun.
lovely
Definitely
thing.
recommend that.
I predict, Jack, that this next piece is going to be your favorite.
Okay. All right.
So
I'm ready.
I'm going to set the bar high. Here we go.
Oh dear. I've never seen
What do
that
you see
before.
there?
That's
do you
very
see here,
interesting.
Jack?
I thought I had seen every knockoff Thunderbird 2 that had ever been done, but I'm not familiar with this one. So yeah, it's it's described on the box as a ray-guided X2 spaceship, but it
Wow.
is quite obviously just a Thunderbird 2 toy that has been painted blue in this case, with a sort of transparent neon green cover for the pod, looks like. But the interesting thing is the box has Thunderbird 2 in green and looks a lot
Right.
more like Thunderbird 2
It
than
does.
the actual toy itself, which is blue. Very, very blue. Not quite. It's more blue than the dinky Thunderbird 2.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, it's
I would say
more
that
saturated blue. It's less metallic. It's
definitely.
more plastic.
Which makes sense because this is a knockoff toy and they've obviously tried as hard as possible to. I say tried as hard as possible. They didn't really try at all, but they have attempted to disguise the fact that it is Thunderbird 2.
Right. So let's take a closer look here. There's a slideshow on vintagespacetoys.com that has some really nice photos of this object. And there's, as you can see, there's a flashlight that comes in the box. That's a curious thing. Also, on the bottom of the spaceship where the pod should go, there's a set of wheels and kind of a door that opens for putting some batteries in.
Yes.
So there's no pod that drops. There's just kind of some batteries. And what do those batteries do? What do the wheels do?
I don't know. At the moment, I'm bewildered. I want to know where the flashlight comes into it.
So let me read this description here. This is going to blow your mind.
Right.
When batteries are inserted and the switch is set, you power up the flashlight, shine to the front of the spaceship to get it going. As soon as light reaches the toy starts to move forward.
So it's a light reactive
Yeah, you can see it's got a little
toy.
sensor right at the top.
Okay, I was going to
And
say solar
apparently,
powered, but it's not solar powered because it takes regular batteries. But
yeah, somehow
oh, I
they've
see. Okay, the image on the front of the box makes sense now because the
right,
the the image. Okay, suddenly this all makes sense. So the image on the front of a box is of a spaceman firing a ray of some kind at a very specific point on the front of not Thunderbird 2.
right,
Um, and that explains also why it's a ray guided uh
right.
machine.
It
So you
actually
shine a
is
light
light
at it and that
controlled.
drives it forward. I have never I don't think I've ever heard of a toy like that at all.
It's
How
very unusual. I've never seen anything
fascinating.
like it either.
No, it's
Uh,
incredible.
Also, it says that spaceship starts running if you catch it from rear, and it has this. It's made in Hong Kong. This toy, so it has
Yes.
that kind of like these instructions have been translated by someone for whom English is not a first language kind of feeling.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fascinating piece. Apparently, it has flashing lights and sounds. It is
Yeah.
very rare. I
Yes.
wasn't able to find it for sale anywhere. Uh,
Okay.
there were some older auctions, very expensive. This guy who sold this edition
Yes.
wouldn't even advertise what price he was selling it for, which fair enough. I'm sure it's quite
Right.
valuable.
Yeah.
But
Very
yeah,
interesting.
a
I
fascinating
don't.
piece.
And what was the year on that? Does it say
Ooh,
1972?
good question.
Probably said, yeah,
Probably
early
not.
70s, probably 1972. So I wonder what the basis of that was, what kind of Thunderbird 2 toy was you presumably they just took
Yeah,
molds from an existing Thunderbird 2 toy and repurposed them. So
I
I'm
did a
not
bit of a
sure.
dig.
Yeah.
The Jay Rosenthal Hong Kong edition of Thunderbird 2 is kind of the closest because it has the
Okay.
same like three-wheeled configuration on the bottom.
Right.
But that toy has both legs, which this doesn't have space for to
Yeah,
place the
that's true.
legs, and a
Yeah.
pod that drops, which this also doesn't have. So
Right.
if it's the same tool, it's heavily modified, which
Yeah.
almost seems like why wouldn't you just do a fresh tool at that point?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's so different.
Yeah.
A really
But they
odd one.
obviously had to modify it to such an extent to make the light thing work, to make the ray guidance system work,
Right.
which I'm amazed that's not a toy. I'm gonna guess, this is my theory. The reason why we've never seen a toy like this is because it probably doesn't work very well.
Yeah, that's
I'm
a
gonna assume that
sound
whatever that
theory.
little flashlight puts out probably doesn't do much to guide the Thunderbird 2, sorry, not Thunderbird 2, towards
The
its target or whatever it's
the
supposed to do.
ray guided X2 spaceship. Thank you very much.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not
Well,
Thunderbird
I'm gonna
2.
guess that you probably have to use that thing in complete darkness. So you
That was
have to
gonna
turn
be
out
yeah.
all the lights, shut the curtains, sit there in darkness with your little flashlight. And the problem is, you're shining a flashlight at it, but otherwise you're in darkness, so you can't even watch your not Thunderbird 2 steer towards you or steer away from you or whatever it's supposed to do. So it's
Bonkers.
just flawed as a concept, but really interesting that they were,
Thinking
experimenting
about
and
it, yeah.
trying to do new things with toys at that time.
Very
That's
curious.
really, really interesting.
I
No,
wonder if
love
you
that.
if you like leave it in the sun or in a room with bright lights, does it just like run by
just
itself
just
until the
goes
batteries wear
crazy.
down?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, if you owned this toy or know someone who did or any of these items, please do leave us a comment.
Yeah, yeah, I
On
would love to
because
know how
we have
well this
so
thing
many
actually
questions.
works. Yeah, yeah.
So many
Oh,
questions.
this is great. Love it.
All right. One final thing.
One more.
Well,
Okay, fantastic.
one final thing and then potentially a bonus. Hold on.
All right. I'm looking forward to this. This is fantastic. This is, you have tickled my exact interest because anyone who's familiar knows that I do Security Hazard minis every single week, where I review different pieces of Jerry Anderson merchandise, different Thunderbirds toys and Stingray toys and all that sort of thing. What Ben has tapped into here very cleverly is my fondness for that merchandise, but he has sidestepped it by going, here's some nasty knockoff stuff that you won't have seen before. And this is great because I haven't seen any of these before. Actually,
That's great.
I thought I
That's
knew
great.
a lot of them. I thought there's a whole world out there of knockoffs that
There's a whole world out there
know
of
about.
cheap and cheerful that you didn't even know.
Well, you say cheap and cheerful, but you're also pointing out how incredibly rare and expensive all of these things are now. Because I guess they didn't make very many of them.
Because of how weird they are. All right, let's see. Let's see if you know this one, Jack. This one you might recognize.
Oh, now I have seen this one before. Yes. So this is how's it described? The Nomura TN Toys Japan Solar X8 NASA space rocket, which is very obviously Thunderbird 1 redressed in quite an audacious color scheme, I will say.
Right.
But yeah, it's Thunderbird 1. There's no getting away from that. It's got wheels on it. It's is it plastic or is it like a tin toy?
I believe it's tin. It has kind of a mix of tin and plastic. It has kind of a 1930s, 40s, 50s feel, kind of like a Flash Gordon spaceship, the way it's painted. It's very bright and colorful, very Japanese in terms of how they like to present their toys. Very, very multicolored, almost garish. You might say.
You could say garish. Yes, the bright yellow tail fins, definitely one thing. The writing on it is hard to read. I think it says Solar X8.
It does.
Yeah, it does, which again is in the most garish font possible, but placed in exactly the same way that the Thunderbird 1 lettering would be placed on it. They haven't done anything creative with that.
No. They've slapped a NASA logo on it.
It's got NASA branding on it, which presumably they're allowed to just slap that on anything they like.
I don't think so.
Yeah. It's got a translucent red nose cone as well, which actually, arguably, you could say is an improvement on the original Thunderbird 1 because visibility inside the original Thunderbird 1 is quite limited. So actually being able to see out the front of it would probably be a good idea.
I agree.
So you can't argue with that. What a curious thing. Now, it's one of those things it's so garish and so brightly decorated that I look at that and go, that's actually quite nice. Obviously it's a knockoff of Thunderbird 1, but it actually, the art style and everything has an appeal all of its own, I think.
Clearly, to a certain type of collector, this would be an essential item. I agree.
I would say so.
Let's dig into it a little bit more, the history of this particular piece. So our friends at VintageSpaceToys.com, they have a different one, a different edition of the same thing.
That's a lovely box. Looks nothing like what it looks like in real life, but the artwork on the box is very
Space
pretty.
Rocket Solar X7, an earlier edition.
Big.
It is quite big. It's the same size as the other one, so the other one's quite big too. It's hard to tell from the picture that I chose. But yeah, it's quite a chunky boy. It is very clearly Thunderbird 1.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, this one is not nearly as subtle in its copying of Thunderbird 1 because it is just silver. It looks, to all intents and purposes, it does look like Thunderbird 1 if you squint.
It does.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cheeky. Very, very cheeky.
Very cheeky. So cheeky, in fact, that at some point in this history, so Nomura started with number 1. They actually had a number 1 edition. That rocket was pulled out of production because of problems with the rights for Thunderbirds, on which this rocket is based. So they actually caught on to this, to what was happening in this case. And Keith Shackleton or someone at Century 21 merchandising was like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
This edition was built in Japan in 1966, about there. It is tin and with some plastic. When switched on, it rides around in circles with the wings wide open. Then suddenly it will stop, rise on a hidden lever hidden beneath the rocket.
Amazing.
A countdown sequence will start, so it has sound effects. The rocket wings retract and the rocket takes off. So there'll be space noise, blinking lights in the tail and in the nose cone. So that nose cone that we saw in the 8 actually lights up.
That is a
and
that's a
flashes.
lot of that's a lot of stuff that it does.
It
My
does. It has
goodness.
so many play features. It's such a shame. I guess because you can see the lever there on the bottom, that
Yeah,
little
you can see underneath, so it sort of
that would be what would
lifts up on that hinge.
push it
Yeah,
back onto its into vertical flight.
yeah, yeah. Oh wow, that is lovely.
So this
That
would
is
have
a
been the ultimate piece of Thunderbird's merchandise if it had been licensed properly.
yeah.
But as
Yeah,
such,
that's the baffling thing. It's got all these play features, and like I'm pretty sure like the officially licensed Thunderbirds toys didn't have anywhere near.
no,
You expect knockoffs to be worse
right,
than the real toys, but these seem better almost.
in a way. And my theory is that they spent so much money developing this really amazing toy with all these fancy play features
Yeah.
that they just didn't have the money to license it properly. So they're like, well, we'll
Or
just release it and no one will notice.
or they spent so much time developing the toy that they were like, well, we kind of do need this to be recognizable so that we
Right.
can sell it, so that we make back the money that we spent on developing this ridiculous toy.
Yeah.
Ridiculous in the best possible way. It's incredibly
Right.
ambitious. Again, I do speculate how well did it actually work.
Sure.
With all of those play features.
I've never
How
seen a
well
video
does
of
it all go?
these toys in motion, so who knows
Yeah,
how well they actually work,
who
especially
knows?
now,
Oh
60
yeah, all
years
these years
later.
later. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I forget it. I guarantee it's probably very hard to get one in perfect condition. But never say never.
Yeah.
Wow, that is really special. That's
So
incredible.
lots of things to add to your Christmas list now, Jack.
Oh, thank you for it. It makes everything I do on Security Hazard Minis look so tame by comparison.
Well,
I,
if you thought that was crazy, I'm going to end on one final note.
okay,
This isn't a ripoff. This is a licensed piece of merchandise, and I
right.
think you'll agree it's one of the greatest pieces of Thunderbird's licensed merchandise ever designed or conceived of
Okay. Oh boy.
by the mind of a human being.
Right.
Ready?
Bracing myself. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh dear. Oh dear. What on earth is that? I mean, phallic is the word that springs to mind, to put it politely. It is a
Friends,
Thunderbird 3. Is it a water gun of some kind?
it is a water pistol,
Right.
a squirt gun.
So the barrel of the gun is a Thunderbird 3 with a sort of bright red tip with yellow at the
A
end.
very blunt tip.
Blunt,
be
yeah,
said.
rounded, with an unfortunate white tip at the end, just to really distract the eye. And then, is there a figure carved into the sort of the handle
There
of the gun as
is
well?
in the butt, the handle of the gun, there is a relief, a bas relief of an international rescue figure
Right, sort of
doing
climbing up a
something.
ladder.
It looks like climbing up a ladder. It's a bit hard to tell
Right,
in this auction photo.
yeah.
Yeah, truly,
So this
truly a
is officially
bizarre item.
licensed. I mean, unfortunately, the tip draws the eye, and you can't get away from what it looks like.
Good heavens.
But otherwise, not a bad piece of Thunderbird's tat. Just it's the sort of thing. Yeah, I can totally imagine licensees just producing and putting Thunderbirds on the side of it. But they have gone to quite an effort to make it look like Thunderbird 3, but didn't quite stick the landing. Let's put it that way.
No, it's one of those curious Japanese toys, and this happens in other countries as well. I don't mean to just single out the Japanese, but there's a thing that happens with toy manufacturing, and I guess especially when there's some distance from the from the franchise where they're like, well, kids will like this because, you know, they like water pistols and they like Thunderbirds. So we'll just put them all together in a way that, you know, doesn't necessarily make sense, but we'll just throw it all together and maybe it'll work.
Because they did make things like water pistols and even cap guns and stuff like that of
They did.
the International Rescue sidearm, like the official one that they actually use in the show. So they did make those as well. And this is just an alternative take on that, where someone looked at Thunderbird 3 and went, well, that kind of looks like the barrel of a gun. I guess we could do something there with that. So
crackers, absolutely crazy.
That's
well,
what
Jack, that is the treasure down below that I had
very
saved for you.
I see it all now. Your whole evil scheme suddenly laid out for me. It all becomes very, very clear. No, I'm very grateful to you for coming up with that, and I think whenever we come to me doing a mystery segment, I've got my work cut out for me. That's for sure.
I'm terrified now of what you're gonna do to get revenge on me for showing you the Thunderbird 3 squirt gun.
I do. How dare you show me your squirt gun in public? How dare you? Oh, dearie me. Well, everyone, that's it for today's show. Thank you very much for watching and listening to the Security Hazard Show. We broadcast here live, for better or worse, every single Wednesday, 6 p.m. UK time, youtube.com/Jack Noel. You can subscribe on YouTube and watch in real time and comment in real time. Thank you, everyone who's been leaving comments as we've been going by today. Lovely to hear all your thoughts on the Treasure Down Below episode. Simpsons Clips 24 just commented, Ben, this is not a chance for you to show your private pictures. You're very welcome to do so. I disagree. I want to see Ben's private pictures as long as they're tasteful.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, please keep it PG. Yes. But if you'd rather not see any of the pictures at all, if you purely prefer to listen to our antics, then you can find Security Hazard. You can find the Security Hazard Show on all your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the rest of that. Please rate and review and share our little show. If you know anyone who would enjoy a little bit of weird Jerry Anderson fandom that we offer, then please do share this podcast with them because we very much enjoy having you all along for the ride. So please do share it and bring new people in. That's what we like to see.
And don't forget, Jack, there's another way that people can help us out and get a little gift from us in return. It's our Patreon, patreon.com/securityhazard. We have already uploaded a bunch of bonus content to go on there. Don't worry if you can't afford to hop on a Patreon right now. We understand and we'll forgive you. But, our motto is give what you can, but only what you can. But if you can't afford to and you'd like to support us in that way, then there's a whole bunch of exclusive videos and commentaries and fun stuff coming your way on that page. And there's a bunch of stuff up there already that you can check out.
Most recently, we put Ben under pressure to answer some of the Andertag questions. That's one for the very long-time Security Hazard fans. You can hear Ben's opinions on 20 different questions about the Jerry Anderson universe. So I really put him through his paces for that.
Absolutely agonizing. I was sweating like phones on the rack.
You definitely were. I could almost smell it from here. It wasn't very pleasant. For everything else, head over to securityhazard.net. That's your one-stop shop. Blog posts, reviews, videos, podcasts. It's all on there, and it's all Jerry Anderson. You can also find links to my social media on there. Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, all available, securityhazard.net. Ben, where can people find you?
Well, I'm at Cinemarionette on Twitter. And on YouTube, please do check out my YouTube channel, subscribe there, and like some of the videos. I've got a lost episode of Starfleet for the first time on YouTube with English subtitles, I believe.
Yep.
Upscaled and in the highest possible quality so far.
Yeah.
Lots of goodies there. You can find me on Blue Sky at Ben Wolf Page, or benwolf.page is my big link tree of everything I'm doing on the internet, including Starfleet blogging and puppet filmmaking and so many other things.
Yeah.
It's all there. It's
Lots
all
of goodies. Lots of goodies. Very nice stuff. But otherwise, that's all. Thank you all very much for tuning in. And, well, I suppose, if we must, we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much. And bye for now.
Bye.